Hey CrossFit Vernon, it's Thursday, and we've got a new topic that we're talking about today. We're going to start a little series. Who knows how long it'll go on for? There's, this is a deep rabbit hole that you can get into lots of conversation topics about. But we're going to be talking about periodization. I'm sure, as an athlete at CrossFit Vernon, you have wondered mid-workout, or when you see the program released, or when you just view the workout online, who comes up with these things? How do they decide what and when to do it? Well, the answer to that question is periodization. Periodization is a plan. It can be any type of plan, but there are some kind of like classic models of periodization, some structure, some empirical and historical stuff that we can lean into to help us create stronger plans. Some really interesting kind of like anecdotes about periodization is generally any plan is better than no plan. So even if you come up with a kind of a terrible plan where you like, I put this here and this here and this here, and somebody who has more experience than you is like, oh man, I don't recommend that. Just having a plan is going to be better than no plan. So if you're designing training programs, start to develop planning tools. Another really interesting thing is that it is incredibly difficult to accurately predict how things will go. So an example would be something like a group of people was surveyed under the worst case scenario, how long will it take you to accomplish this task? And even in optimal situations, it typically takes longer than what they would have determined to be worst case scenario. So Jeremy, how long is it going to take you to put the new sign up at the gym? Well, I think if worst case scenario, things go really bad, it's going to take me 2 weeks. Everything goes pretty well, it still is going to take me 2 to 3 weeks to do this task. And that is just how our ability to plan things goes. On top of that, the human body is extremely complicated. We know very little about it, despite what people, how much we do know about it. Relative, we know extremely little about it, and we don't know how all of the things work interconnectedly. A comparison that would kind of like help you to understand just how complicated it is and how challenging it is to predict it is comparing our ability to predict outcomes in training to our ability to predict the weather. Now, I'm sure, like myself, you have experienced frustrations with weather predictions. Say it's going to be sunny, turns out it rains. Tomorrow is going to be rainy, turns out it's sunny. And they're not managing a lot, right? Like pressure, humidity, temperature, trends, it's kind of this three-dimensional model. There's things coming in, things going out, things moving around this way. In the body, billions of things are happening all at once, and there are billions of things environmentally that are going to impact us. We have no idea just how complicated it is and what is going to affect what. When we're at low levels of stress, we're quite stable. The body is very strong and adaptable. When we start to increase stress, and in the training world, this would be high levels of intensity or high levels of training volume, the homeostasis of our system can become very delicate, and it can take only just one thing, like somebody looking at you the wrong way at the grocery store. It can kind of tip things in the wrong direction, and all of a sudden we have a cascade of things, and eventually you get sick or you get injured. So there is a very delicate balance at the highest levels of training that periodization can help us predict and manage, but again, it is very challenging to predict and manage these things. So those are some kind of curious anecdotes about periodization. The meat and potatoes. What is it? It's a plan. How do we start formulating this plan? Well, at CrossFit Vernon, if you joined within the last year or so, you probably went through a free consult before you joined. And this is getting an accurate assessment of the individual. So somebody comes to me, Jeremy, I want to compete at the CrossFit Games. Okay, I know what goes into competing at the CrossFit Games. Jeremy, I want to get in better shape for playing pickleball. Okay, I kind of understand this goal a little bit, like this person needs to be fit enough to last through a game. They need to be able to move side to side. They need to be strong. They need to have good balance, coordination, agility, all of these things. So we want to understand what their goal is. Then we want to assess their commitment. Jeremy, I want to go to the CrossFit Games, but I work shift work and I work 60 hours per week. Well, your commitment to that goal is going to be very challenged because you've got other commitments that are taken away from it. Jeremy, I want to go to the CrossFit Games. I'm 19 years old and money is not an issue and I don't have to work. I can just train all day long. Okay, well, now your ability to commit to this goal is much greater than the person who's working shift work 60 hours a week. So it's not necessarily what you give in terms of commitment, but what you are able to give. We need to understand the demands of the task. I was talking about, pickleball versus the CrossFit Games, specific sports, whatever that task is, whatever that goal is, we need to understand what we're going to train to accomplish that goal. And what those are is we're going to call them key performance indicators, or KPIs. And we can base these KPIs, if we want, on a model that already exists, which is the 10 general physical skills. Our fitness qualities, cardiorespiratory endurance and stamina, our strength qualities, or our movement capacity qualities, flexibility, strength, speed, and power, and then our skill or technical and tactical qualities, balance, coordination, agility, and accuracy. Those are our sport-specific skills. If I'm a pickleball player, I need good agility to move side to side. I need some good accuracy and coordination. I need good balance. My fitness, the games aren't super duper intense compared to what somebody at the CrossFit Games might deal with, but they're extended duration and they have short bouts of speed and power. So I do need a pretty good level of fitness. I need to be strong enough to stop and start. I need to be able to get in. I need to have the flexibility to get into different positions. The faster and the more powerful I am, the better I'm going to be able to get to the ball. All of these things matter, and then we can just apply them specifically to the sport. So the accurate assessment of what we're actually trying to accomplish, so knowing what we're trying to accomplish, having a goal to strive towards, progress towards, and then coming up with an understanding of what it's going to take to achieve that goal. Then we can begin planning. And this is where things start to get kind of interesting, but oftentimes people will jump ahead. So start with an accurate assessment. Next is planning. And the planning typically follows the microcycle, mesocycle, and macrocycle plan. I'll break those three terms up for you today, and then we're going to wrap it up because I want to try and keep these videos short. So we start at the macrocycle. Macrocycle is your long-term plan. It's going to be your annual plan. It usually centers around the big competition of the year. It could be the CrossFit Games, the World Championships, the provincial championships, whatever you're training for, the national championships. That's kind of like what things are going to wrap around. In the Olympics, they follow a quadrennial cycle, 4-year cycle. So they all build people up, and then there's stops in there, World Championships and whatnot. So the macrocycle is our annual plan. We want to look at this entire year or entire 4-year plan at our penultimate goal or event. And then we're going to start by plugging in important dates. If we're an Olympic athlete and we're following a 4-year plan, well, in the 4 years leading up to the Olympics, I'm also going to have 4 world championships. Maybe I will also compete in some Pan American championships or some European championships or some Commonwealth Games in there. If I'm a CrossFit athlete, obviously the CrossFit Games is the kind of like the big event of the year, but we've also got the Rogue Invitational, which happens in October, and we've got the Wadapalooza. There are different dates and important, the Open, semifinals, quarterfinals. All of these things are very important, and they're going to impact our training. So we start with our annual plan, the penultimate goal, the date that matters most, and then we're going to back out all of the other important dates. We need to remember those KPIs, those key performance indicators, because that's what we're going to base our planning on. And then once we have all these things in place that we can't change, we have to manage around, then we can start blocking out some training that's gonna be focused on meeting our KPIs, our key performance indicators. So I'm a CrossFit athlete, I get out of breath when I walk up the stairs. Jeremy, you need to be fitter. You need to work on your cardiorespiratory endurance and your stamina. We are going to put a lot of focus on cardiorespiratory endurance and stamina the entire year out. Every block, every opportunity that we have is going to be pushing towards increasing your fitness qualities. Jeremy, I hear you want to go to the CrossFit Games. What's your best snatch? It's 95 pounds. Okay, well, most of the men at the CrossFit Games are snatching around 300 pounds, so we're going to have to work on that. That is a deficient key performance indicator. So we assess those and we start plugging them into the gaps that we have in our year around our important dates. Now, the big question that you're going to ask yourself in this macro cycle plan is, what do I need to accomplish? Those are my key performance indicators. And how much time do I have to accomplish it? If I'm stacked up with events and I can only train 4 weeks here and I got an event, 4 weeks there and I've got an event, it makes it very difficult to build things up in our mesocycle, which is the next step of our plan. So once we know what our year looks like, and we've got some KPIs that we need to improve, some deficiencies that we need to bring up to a fair level, then we can start planning where we're going to put those training blocks. Mesocycles, what we're looking at is, what do we need to accomplish? How long do we have to accomplish it? So let's say, the CrossFit Games is in August, the Rogue Invitational is in October. I've got 6 to 8 weeks before I need to switch gears back into competition mode. So I've got this little chunk here, and then after the Rogue Invitational, you're not doing anything until the Open again? Okay, well, we've got like 30 weeks of time here. Let's plan things out so that we can really make the most of this 30-week block of training. And it's going to be based upon your KPIs, the deficiencies that you see. So you use these mesocycles to form specific training blocks that are going to have within them progression, right? You're going to repeat these blocks a number of times until you reach your KPIs. And inside the mesocycle are microcycles. Microcycles typically are a week long. At CrossFit Burn, we follow a 9-day microcycle applied to a 5-day week. So we've got these 9 days and a 5-day week. So what that does is it helps us keep things new and changing every week. If it was a 5-day week, every Monday you come in and you do back squat. Every Tuesday is going to be pull-ups. If you don't come on Tuesdays, you're never going to get to see pull-ups. So we have this 9-day microcycle that spans across a 5-day week, and then we get all of this change over the week. That microcycle repeats, hopefully in a progressive manner, and the number of times that it repeats creates the mesocycle. So let's use a very simple example. In week 1, I'm going to back squat 4 sets of 6. This is what we did last week. We're front squatting, but 4 sets of 6. Right? 6 is hard. It's a decent number of reps. The next week, we're going to do 5 sets of 5. 5, a little bit fewer reps, so I should be able to handle a little bit more weight. The week after that, 6 sets of 4. 4 is a little bit less. I can handle a little bit more weight. 8 sets of 3. 3 is less than 4, I can do more weight. So you can see how things are progressing. I'm lifting heavier and heavier and heavier weights every time I repeat this back squat cycle. So that's how the microcycle builds into the mesocycle. It should follow a logical progression, whether it be an increase in intensity, so I'm going to lift heavier and heavier weights every time, or I want to increase in total workload. So a fitness conditioning progression that we follow, we do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off for 20 minutes. And then we do 45 seconds on, 30 seconds off for 20 minutes. We get a little bit of extra work in there. 60 on, 30 off, 20 minutes. 90 on, 30 off, 20 minutes. 2 minutes on, 1 minute off, 20 minutes. 3 minutes on, 1 minute off. And you can see how that 20 minutes gets more and more full of work. So that's the progression that the microcycle goes through to create the mesocycle. And then the mesocycle is determined by meeting your KPI. So if you start to get close to that KPI, you're doing kind of regular tests and checking in with your athlete or checking in with yourself. Am I getting closer to this goal? Have I reached this goal? Okay, well now I can look at the next most deficient thing in my list of KPIs, and I will start to attack that thing. But in the annual plan, you would have already known all of those things. You can rank them. I always think about the video game score. You've got strength and speed and stamina and all of these things. You can just take the 10 general physical skills, put them all in there. Oh, my strength is way up here, but my stamina is way down here. Well, until I get my stamina to the same level as my strength, I'm not going to focus much on strength. I'm instead going to focus on stamina, and hopefully those two balance each other out. I don't want this, especially as a CrossFit athlete. CrossFit is a general physical preparedness program. We want to create a broad, general, and inclusive fitness. That's the goal of CrossFit. Is I should have this level video game character bar. strength, speed, power, flexibility, cardiorespiratory endurance, stamina, balance, coordination, accuracy, agility, and so on. So, periodization. That's where we start, is we start with this planning concept. We look at our annual plan, we put in our important dates, we understand KPIs, and then we start to put in our mesocycles. How long is it going to last? How will I run a progression successfully through that block that I've created for myself to focus on this KPI? When I reach important milestones, I will transition my attention to things that are lacking or need attention. Basis for periodization. We'll dive into it a little bit deeper, and we'll talk about different kind of like strategies, different types of periodization, but that should get you guys started with understanding how program is designed and how periodization works. See you next week.